and welcome to Open School of Business. Today, I'm very excited to introduce you to Sherrin Ross Ingram. She is a powerhouse woman, in my opinion, because she started off as an attorney, and now she is a successful, accomplished business owner doing strategy. Hi, Sherrin.
Hi,
Welcome
Anar.
to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. What a pleasure to be here with you.
I am so happy to see you, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah,
So,
me too.
yes, and I want you to start off by telling us about yourself, some of the accomplishments that I haven't mentioned, and I loved your profile on LinkedIn, and I think it's one of the things that people should also learn on how to write this summaries about themselves to attract the customers that
Mhm.
will be good for their businesses. So
Well, great.
do a little introduction.
So I'll just kind of give you the brief background and kind of a little bit of what brought me here to this space today. Uh, you know, I started out not ever thinking that I would be doing the kind of work I'm doing today. I don't know if that story is familiar with a lot of people, but it was never my intention to be a consultant on strategy for that matter. I really set out with my initial career goal to be chairperson of the Federal Reserve Board. uh,
That's
my,
an
my,
ambitious goal.
my degree was in economics, and I love everything about numbers, data, talking about the influence of behavior on the economy and all those things like that just goes into understanding the economic world. And so as part of my journey towards that eventual goal, someone had once gave me advice about, well, a lot of good leaders have a JD or they were trained as an attorney. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So that kind of is what led me to the attorney life. So it wasn't necessarily something I grew up saying, oh, I want to be a lawyer, but it was part of the journey. And so after law school, I went to work for a firm like most people do. And while I really thrived on the intellectual challenge, there was just something about it that was just still always missing for me. It just didn't quite get me out of bed raring to go in the morning. And then I noticed that a lot of my clients were starting to ask me questions that had nothing to do with the law. Asking for advice, business decisions and things like that. And eventually, my lightning fast mind got the message like, well, maybe people are interested in learning other things about you. And the more I started diving into giving business advice, the more I really felt led back to my economic roots. And I really said, okay, well, let's strategize and include in part of that strategy here all the different factors that go towards creating demand for products and services, of which the economy is one. So my consulting really started out with really helping customers understand what really goes into the demand for their products and services so that they would understand that not everything is just about having a plan. Not everything is about how great your marketing is, but there's a lot of factors at work underneath the surface that bubbles up into what we call demand for a product and service. And what do you do with that information? And how do you do strategic planning around that? And so that was kind of my genesis, if you'll call it
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, that's really great. And I think during this pandemic time, a lot of that shifted. And I'm curious
Mhm.
on how you helped your clients transition or pivot this challenging year.
Yeah, I would probably say the number one thing I felt like my job really was to remind my clients all the time, and sometimes myself, that, we're in this period of heightened uncertainty, but the reality is uncertainty is always around. It has been always around. It's a different experience, no doubt, because of the virus, but we will get past this. And what are you going to be positioned for once we do? So my whole mantra was really positioning yourself to be stronger than you were before. And so we took that time to do lots of things for different clients, depending upon where they were in their life cycle, in their business life cycle, that is. So some clients we focused on really honing in and developing the strategic thinking skills of their remote workers because people seem to have a little bit more time. And then for other clients, it was almost like we never took a break. We just did it remotely. I mean, things kept forging ahead. I was really fortunate that many of my clients were considered to be in essential businesses, so they never shut down. And so life continued with the challenges of COVID, as well as the need to always keep our eye on the strategic goals that we had for ourselves.
Yes, and because of our audience, a lot of them are looking for new inspiration and ideas. I was wondering if you have noticed any trends this year that could be used as a new business idea for the next year or so on.
Well, I don't know about the new business idea portion of that because there's always new ideas like that, but I can definitely tell you part of the trend I do see, and this has to do with company culture. Yes, I don't think we'll ever go back completely to the way things was. In terms of all the meetings that we once used to fly to, I mean, I used to be on a plane weekly, sometimes twice a week, way too much for my family's taste. But I'll tell you, I really believe, one, the bar has been raised significantly about what really counts towards having an in-person meeting. In other words, it's not just about showing up and making a couple of decisions, because now that we can do these sort of things online, with as much of the in-person feel as possible, it's a definite trend towards figuring out new ways to engage remotely. How do we stay connected? How do we get the human experience even though we're not face to face? And so I know I spend a lot of time in my days. I mean, really, actually set aside specific time to thinking on that question. What else can I do to engage remotely that, makes up for at least a little more this remote feeling that we have? I think the companies that are going to be able, or we're not just companies, individuals who really understand how to engage remotely, they're the ones who are ultimately going to thrive. I mean, at least for my team and I, we have been busy really trying to marry as much of the in-person experience with the remote. So that's everything from sending hard copies of things out, even though we could easily make them as an attachment to an email, just so people can have the feel of something in their hands while going through it, even though they can easily scroll it. So we're just doing, rather, I would say not doing, but we're really experimenting with a lot of different things to do to maintain that human connection.
Now, that's a wonderful idea. Because people do need some kind of inspiration and the feeling to be in touch together. And I definitely love the fact that you spend you dedicate some time to think about the process.
Yes.
And this is one of the big things that differentiate people who thrive and the people who are just so busy working rather than analyzing their process and improving their work process to gain more profit and gain more value. So when you were first the founder of the company, you said you already had clients that were coming in for legal services, and then it kind of transitioned into business advice and others. Still, I'm sure there were certain challenges that you came across, and I'm curious to find out what were they and how you dealt with them.
Yeah, back when I first started, it really was the physical world. That was during a time where you had to have a nice conference room, and all these things seemed to matter that people could honestly care less about now. So talk about evolution. But my biggest challenge back then was duplicating me. And not just in duplicating me in terms of tasks. I found it very challenging to find people to help me who thought the way I did. I mean, part of the really unique value proposition that I bring to my clients is the ability to see through a lot of the clutter and offer valuable insights. So finding other people who really could zero in on those kinds of things was my biggest challenge. I mean, I could find people to help me with the marketing and all these other things like that, but it was the core work that I found to be the most challenging to duplicate. And still to this day, in many respects, that part never changed.
That is exciting because usually that's, nowadays talent is the key. And being able to find those gems and to make sure you have a solid relationship and then outsourcing them out to your clients is such a great value. And
It
I
is.
really admire that.
Thank you.
So when you were searching, like I'm sure over the years now you have a certain criteria and certain way of testing people. Oh, if you could share some of
Yes.
that.
Yeah, I learned early on that I was way too subjective. I would meet someone and become like, this kid in the candy store, like, I've got to have that one, I've got to have that person, I've got to have them. I didn't have really a mixture of the objective as well as the subjective evaluation or assessments. And so I learned to bring assessments into the process very early. And in fact, there was for some roles, they took the assessment and based upon the results of the assessment, and we're talking about culture type, personality, not like, not the tangible core skill things, because I really do believe you can train for skills, but it's the person that I have to hire for. And so I started bringing in objective measures to help me really take some emotion out of the hiring process. There's an old phrase that says, hire slow but fire fast. I really had to embrace that for myself because I did used to hire fast. I was hiring based upon instinct, and my instinct at that time really wasn't well honed. It wasn't trained. People think instinct is just something you just have. No, we train our instincts. Okay.
Yeah, that's called experience.
Exactly. We trained them. And so at the time I wasn't well versed in those things. And so I made a lot of emotional decisions that felt right, but ultimately wasn't right. So I would encourage anyone who's looking to hire, whether it be that first person or the 100th person, to really have an objective measure. And by objective, I don't just mean bring a couple of other people into the mix. I'm talking about really, what does it look like on paper as well as what does it look like in your gut? When you can marry those things, you increase your chances of finding the right hire exponentially.
Yeah, because it's a lot of red flags you have to go through when you screen out for applications. So I totally get that. And I'm curious also about the assessments you were talking about. Are there any specifics like Myers-Briggs test or Gallup Strengths test?
Nope.
Any of those or something else? What's the profile? I'm trying to understand the personality of like an average consultant from your firm.
Well, without being, prescriptive, I'll just say there's ones that I've liked in like the culture index, the predictive index. Oh, those are the kind I'm talking about. And I'm just talking about personality Myers-Briggs and things. Those never really worked for me very, very well. I wanted to know about what kind of fit people were going to be for my culture. To me, at the end of the day, it's really all about culture. I think culture is the engine that drives strategy. I do not believe culture eats strategy for breakfast, but I do believe it is the engine that drives strategy. So that's the fit that I'm looking for. Someone who has a track record or at least the indication that they have a personality of excellence and they fit within the culture.
Right. I know from my own experience and from, a lot of other people's experience, ambitious, accomplished people who achieve excellence wherever they go, they tend to have a very high demand and also they're very dynamic.
Yes.
So if they're not growing or the company is not growing with them, there's a high chance they'll be moving on or some kind of dynamics going to be happening.
Yes.
So how do you deal with that? What are your thoughts on that?
Sure. I really do believe that a culture is what attracts the good people, and a culture is what keeps the good people. When you're having problems with retention, you really got to look at the environment. What are you offering in terms of a compelling value proposition that your competitors can't? or is it ultimately only about the money? Because if it's about the money, unless you have the deepest pockets, you'll lose. So what else are you compensating for, and how are you showing that? And I can tell you, I've seen this happen a lot too in a lot of the union environments. People say, well, look, it's all about the money for these guys. I mean, or women, they'll leave for an extra quarter or something like that. And I found that those who have really great cultures and atmospheres of engagement, they don't lose their people, even the union ones, for the extra quarter or the extra dollar. They don't, because it's more than just the money. Money, I mean, culture goes so far and makes up for so many things that money can't provide. And I think we forget that a lot.
Yeah, I agree about that. And especially these days, I'm sure with a lot of more diversity coming in, a lot more um, new industries opening up. The talented people have so much variety um, of things that they can do with their time that's very valuable. So
Yes.
all the companies should thrive to give them inspiration, to give them a challenge, and really invest into their development. So, talking about development, what kind of activities in your company do you do for um, development and such for your employees?
Sure. I have a couple of things that are just my favorites, and then there's some general things we do. I mean, everything from bringing in speakers on certain subjects, whether that be emotional intelligence, or maybe that's on some specific core skill that's going to help us really do the technical work that we do for our clients. But I also really like just what I call my strategy questions. So I have a contest around a strategy question every week. Think of it as scenario planning for the individual, but I pose a scenario and, what would you do? How would you respond to that? What would be your strategic answer to this question that everyone participates in? And so I just like engaging people in their thinking that way to really help them feel that they're a part of it. This is from top line all the way down to the front line. And so I really like to encourage my employees to read. So we kind of have a reading contest as well. I mean, what book did you read? And, can you come up? I mean, can you do up a little summary and share and talk about it? So I do all little kinds of things. I really want to engage and strengthen thinkers. I want people to be more strategic thinkers. And so I try to create that kind of atmosphere to do that. And remote has been a challenge to do that, but it hasn't been a total obstacle either. And in some ways, like me sending the book to everybody and just including little gifts with things. I mean, I'm trying to figure out ways again to marry the physical with the remote. And it seems to work. And a lot of my clients who embrace similar things about their culture, they find that they're developing more cohesiveness. They're developing more trust because we now know each other better the more we interact in these ways. But more importantly, you got to find people who are interested in that kind of a culture. I mean, not everybody wants that. And so now you get to make the choice as a leader. Is this the kind of person I want on the bus with me or not? And,
Yeah.
pull over to let them off if it's not.
Yeah, that's just fabulous. I love all the little elements that you're implementing that work authentically for your firm. And I'm sure this helps you to engage very similar kind of clients because they would be attracted to the similar culture.
Yes.
So now with years and years of experience, you have the choice of, choosing your clients, so to speak. When you were beginning, how was that different? And would you do things differently, or are there any insight you'd like to share with us?
That's always the hard question to ask. If I knew then what I know now, the experiences then has led me to who I am now and what I do now. So if I gave up some of these things, would I still be the person I am today? I mean, that's a tough question to ask. I can just say that in the beginning, like many, I took business when we were first launching, and whether or not it was a fit, in fact, that kind of language didn't even cross my mind. It was a customer who was willing to pay and thought I
You
could
were
do the job.
busy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we just took the client. But what I learned over time is that there are certain clients that are profitable all the way around. And there are certain clients that despite paying the money, just literally suck the life out of you in the business. And so that whole notion of a cultural fit between my client and myself really became real once I was just feeling totally exhausted. And I thought it was because of the business, but it wasn't the business. It was just the way I was operating the business, i.e., taking on clients that really didn't match my values, my style. They just had the ability to pay and they had a need. So I stopped looking for clients who needed what I do and started finding clients who wanted what I do. And even beyond wanting this, really wanting this, that I really clicked with them, gelled with them in terms of our values. So all of the people we represent now, they're led by people who are really learners. They're growers. They are all out to be better because they recognize that a company is nothing more than a sum total of all the people together there. If the people don't get better, the company doesn't get better. So they are really big investors in learning. They're big investors in culture. They really believe in having a well thought out, engaged culture that they measure and look for ways to progress. So that's probably one of the hallmarks of all of my clients, that they're learners and they really invest. They don't just give lip service to wanting a high performing culture.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I can see that, the whole effectiveness of your clients depends on the effectiveness of your company. And that leads to your own personal effectiveness. And I've seen that you publish so many books on personal growth, on professional growth. Can you share how you got into it, where you got the time to do it? And, a lot of our audience are aspiring to do both. And then usually the time and the money is always a question for them.
Well, I can tell you that that's probably one of the things that if I had to do all over again, that I would do very, very differently. All of this really has its genesis in business development for me, the books. I really wanted to have my primary way of generating new clients was through speaking. I really learned someone really basically convinced me that the best way to get clients was to speak, to do speeches. They said, you get to be in front of the people. They get to know, like, and trust you right away. All of those things that most people have to go through building rapport is solved by speaking. And I really bought into that hook, line, and sinker. So I said, okay, if I'm going to go for business development, really my only way, aside from referrals and people happening to find me on the internet, that's not our real thrust here. Really to this day remains speaking. And so I really learned that to get more speaking engagements, have a book. Meeting planners loved books. So I said, okay, I set out to have a book for every topic that I spoke on. So that way I was the expert on every single topic that I spoke on. And it ended up being right. Every time I would have a book and promote that, well, come on in and speak. Then I really realized that speaking could be an income stream itself. I was like, wow, people get paid to do this. So the more I really invested in developing myself as a speaker, and even a paid speaker, the more business started coming. So all the books came about because of my desire to be booked for higher fees. Because it wasn't just about the money, but the higher fees brought you in front of bigger audiences. And usually once you were really clear about your target market, a well-defined audience, to the point that I knew that if I spoke in front of my target market, I could pretty much predict what my conversion ratio was going to be, and I could budget based on that. So it all fed each other. So I would tell anybody, get yourself not just a book. I know a couple of people who've managed to go without a book, and they do okay, but I don't think their business really survives upon them getting clients through speaking. They do it for other reasons. At least that's just been my experience. So I would just really tell you, get the book. Because you want to be showcased as an expert. Meeting planners love experts. And if it's between you and someone who doesn't have a book, who doesn't have some other reputation in the industry, you are going to be the one to get the gig. And if you're in the front of the right audience and if the speech is done right, because it's not just about speaking, it's about doing a speech in the way that sells your services.
Inspires them.
Well, it's selling your services, but it doesn't sell. I mean, that's all in how you construct the speech. So once you get all those little mechanics parts right, speaking, I really do think pound for pound is the most potent and most lucrative way to build your business. It was how I built mine. In fact, I think about either every client we have right now, 95% of them came through speaking and the others probably was referral.
Wow. You definitely sold me on the idea. And you were saying you were going to do it differently. So I wasn't sure how.
Oh, well, what I would do differently is I would have focused earlier on having those books, having all of those resources and things like that, all of that companion stuff. I mean, I would have done a couple of different levels. I mean, right now, I mean, we are probably considered a premium consulting services, meaning we probably charge more for a similar service than other places do, but that's because of the value we add. But what I mean to say that, there's certain people who probably can't afford what I do. So I would have, if I had to do it all over again, when I did those books, I would make lots of home study courses I don't want to, belittle that, but I mean, I would have made packages to help people do more for themselves. So in other words, I could still help them even if I couldn't take them on directly as a client, because when people see you speak, if you're any good at it, they want to bring you home. and the more options you have to let them take some of you with them, those things become revenue streams as well. And you'll find that once they even have your system, at some point they still want you. And so they come back a little bit later. So it's been an interesting journey. So that's what I definitely would do differently, is I would get more products, showcasing my expertise out sooner than I did. I mean, I was about 10 years, almost 15 years in before I really took that seriously.
Yes. And you do have the charisma for it and the experience and all the hard work that you've put in. It really does shine through. So
well, thank you for saying that, because, people seem to think that I'm this extrovert and love to be around people all the time, and nothing could be the farthest from the truth. I'm probably the textbook definition of an introvert, and I would much rather be somewhere meditating or reading a book most of the time. So I've had to really get outside of my comfort zone. I mean, I love what I do, so it's all good. But no, being in front of people is not something that I particularly seek out and would put high on my list. So thank you for saying that.
Right. Well, that just shows the level of self-improvement that went on it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's just extraordinary for the introvert to do something that is essential to grow your business. That's commitment. That shows hard work, commitment, all the things that you really need. And we as, women, minorities, we always need to put in even more extra.
Yeah.
And, that's the question I think I cannot avoid whenever I have a woman on the podcast. I always ask about this, family, home balance, work and balance. And a lot of times if you have kids, whether there was a gap and how you dealt with that. And generally, since you're a strategy person, do you see a more sustainable solution to this challenge that the USA has?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Anara, you're bringing back memories here. So yes, I am married 28 years now. And I have a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old, 16-year-old son and a 13-year-old daughter. And that elusive balance, I've stopped striving for it. I mean, I don't even know if it's real. I just try and make sure that everyone gets me, as much of me as that they could possibly handle or want. That's kind of my goal, because I never achieved it. So no, I don't have an answer. There are just days where I'm more involved in the business. And then there are days where it's all about family and every day back and forth. So were there gaps? Probably so, probably plenty of them. But it's funny about the strategy part. I had kids a little later in life, so to speak. My husband and I enjoyed being married for quite some time before we had kids. And so when they finally came along, I was really wedded to a lot of my practices. We were just able to go wherever we want, do what we want, whenever we wanted, right? And so I had kids, and I found the biggest challenge was just getting out the door with kids. I mean, all the stuff you had to pack. And in one of my moments, my mother was laughing at me. This is why this made me think of it. She's like, I'm sitting down writing a strategic plan for how to pack a diaper bag and get out the door. I mean, I really wrote this strategic plan up. This is how we're going to get out the door in a certain amount of time and all these things. And my mother was like, are you kidding me? You're literally writing a formal strategic plan about packing a diaper bag and getting in the car. And I mean, that's how I was. So yes, I bring work to home and I bring home to work all the time. So it's a constant thing. And the other thing about this, I mean, my husband and I pretty much have been entrepreneurs all of our lives. Our kids grew up in an entrepreneurial house. So I've always strived to make them some way a part of the business. I mean, now that my daughter's 13, I will have her type up things for me just to get her involved, somehow, just to let them know. And that's one of the ways in which we spend time together. So we get creative in marrying family life with work life. But my work is a lifestyle. It's not just something I do every once in a while. And my family is the center of it. So.
Yes, and I love that because I think that is really the love, the life and the career that you love, and it's all marrying together. And the reason why I brought up the sustainable strategy for women in general is because I think we are lucky enough because we are business owners, and we can do that, bringing work to home and vice versa, and take little gaps here and there, and then go back and earn the client, find the client, do all that work. Is a lot of we get a lot of independence in our actions and the profits, etc. However, when you're working for a company and you want to grow to the top in a corporate career, women don't get the chance to actually even spend more than 3 months with their baby, and it's a 4 months baby going into a daycare. And with the pandemic, you can imagine how things are so hard this year. And I think there was a Family Relief Act this year that allowed parents to stay and not work for up to 2 weeks if something happened to their daycare, which expired this year. And I personally seen some of my ex-colleagues having issues with the daycare closing during, due to COVID breakout. And there are a lot of mess right now. And even in the world, in the US, we have the shorter maternity, paternity leave. And as a business owner, I also see how it is good for companies and, especially small businesses. But the big corporations, how can they try and find a solution for this challenge to keep their women at work, to keep inspiring women to go into management positions and spending more time at work?
If I had to, mind you, I don't have the solution to that question. But I would say to you that I really think that the more opportunities that the company can provide for women to interact with their children, their families about their work, they probably would see more engagement. And by that, I mean, one of the things, like I said, getting my daughter involved in like typing up things like that. I actually got that idea from an interview I read from a woman who was CEO of a Fortune 500 company. She talked about how she would always share literally the ins and outs, the problems. She talked with her kids and her family at the dinner table about what was going on and asked their advice, even if she wasn't necessarily in the beginning expecting, great advice. It was just her way of bringing them into what she was doing, and they understood some of the struggles she might be facing. And over time, she said what she noticed was that they were engaged and they were offering advice. And so some of the leadership development things that she was doing along the way, she would include them. Like, this is what I learned today. What do you all think about this? I mean, she just basically engaged her family in what she was doing. So that idea came from someone who was in corporate America, and now is doing really great things, I think, to help merge the gap between what being out of the office and being at home, just to make your family feel included in what you're doing.
Yeah, I love that, because I think what this technique has been as old as the world, because I am coming from generations of teachers.
Yes.
And, now I'm a business trainer, but there is a reason I never taught to be a trainer, but it comes naturally to me because I've seen my grandma doing, checking homework every day on our desk. I've seen my mom, and even when I was done with school, instead of going to, home, oftentimes I would go to my mom's school to sit through her classes. Now, once my classes are done, and that I learned so much, I think, subconsciously, like almost unconsciously, like without really learning, without really doing, just by absorbing all that experience.
I think that's exactly the point. I mean, unless you have work that's, like really confidential, like, I'm trying to imagine what that would be. You'd be surprised at how your family's looking. Your children are looking. Maybe you can just involve them in what you're doing somehow, explaining to them what you're doing, why you're doing it. One of the things I did last summer, I was teaching my daughter how to do PowerPoint. I was working on a PowerPoint presentation for a particular speech that I was going to do, and she was around. And so I just showed her how to do it and had her come up with her own topic and do her own PowerPoint. She was 12. She just turned 12. So, it was those kinds of things that it was time together. I was imparting to her a skill that would be valuable. I told her about what I was doing. It was just time. I think we just need to leverage all of these moments that we can.
Yeah.
And so it's not just about them always being doing what I'm doing, but I'm learning about what they're interested in as well. But my kids know we're in an entrepreneur house. Okay.
Yeah. And
so
these
this
days
is lifestyle.
They can teach you more things about social media and the TikTok and the other marketing venues for the new things.
Absolutely. They definitely introduced me to those things, but I have a passion to learn all of that stuff. So once I know about it, I dive in but it's a new conversation for us. I'm like, well, did you know you could do this on TikTok? And they go, oh, well, Mom, did you know you could do this? So, it's really good. So yeah, get involved, have conversations. You'd be surprised at what you learn and what they learn that could be useful.
Yes, I can't agree more, because it's funny enough, because I've been working on this concept of teaching teens to business and business skills, and also how to start your own business type of course. And the reason being is, at this age, they have a lot of time, and they have a lot of energy. And like never before, they have this, like no one else, like not different ages. They're so much in touch with what they really want. What are their real, like, inner talents. They are more in touch with themselves than us, who've been through different schooling, different ideas about what's prestigious in a society, or what can make you the most profits, and etc. So they can really tap into their own passion and learn how to make that a business, and how to make their lifestyle a business. So this
wonderful.
is one of my new projects, and I'm so happy.
Well, you let me know when you do it. Let me know when you get it going, because my kids might be some of your new new participants, because that is amazing. That is something that we really need to engage our teens, because if we're not engaging them, believe me, something else is engaging them, and you don't know what influence that might have. And I think the pandemic has only heightened that, because now, they can be in their classroom, because I've really caught my son doing this a couple times, with some other screen open doing something else, or having their phone out too, looking at something. I mean, there's all kind of things that are just really vying for their attention. So we have to fill that time with something positive, or else they'll fill it with something that could be really detracting them or derailing them from their future careers or destiny.
Right. And I think this is the best parenting advice I've heard so far, indirectly. Yeah. If something else is, if we're not engaging them, something else is.
Absolutely.
So it is very important to, up till a certain age, to be engaged with their development.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just leads me to your own childhood and your own development. The books that inspired you, the family traditions you had that may have had impact on how you grew up. I think this could be a very interesting venue for
Absolutely.
our
Thank you. No, thank you for
discussion.
the opportunity to share the little backdrop stuff. I grew up in a house where my mother was very big on gratitude and being thankful. So a lot of families, at Thanksgiving time, like, they go around and say what they're thankful for and things like that. Well, that was a regular practice in my house at dinner time. And what are you thankful for today? What are you thankful for today? And so I really did grow up with this notion of really appreciating the here and the now, while you are preparing for whatever the next great adventure of your life happens to be. And so I think I really did carry that throughout my entire life with me. I've always had a sense of, I would just say, I don't want to say calm, but maybe that's what it is, a sense of calm about things. I mean, not everything goes my way, not by a long shot, but, I've always had a way of just responding that brought a sense of calm to the atmosphere. And I think that's one of the reasons why clients really would seek my advice on things, is because I just had a way of enhancing the stability and the message that, what, this might be bad or horrible. We're going to get through it, and we're going to come out better for it. And I think because of that, another part of your question was, what are the books that probably influenced me? There's only one that really comes to mind, and that is the Bible. I always really loved the example that Jesus set in the Bible about how to respond to things. I mean, people treated him horribly when he did nothing wrong at times. He had enemies and all these things like that, but he always wanted to show concern, show love. And I really took all that kind of things to heart. So I really tried to infuse the atmosphere, if you will, with that sense of calm, that sense of there is a solution, we'll find it. And when we do, we're going to be better off than we ever had imagined before this. And I think those are the kind of lessons that just have served me well all of my life. And I hope I pass that on to my children, because I think it will serve them as well.
Absolutely. I think it serves everyone who ever come across you. Like one of those workshops that I attended for when we spoke at the Conscious Leadership Summit at QMIS. Mm-hmm. It was great. I was so inspired by seeing the title, even that there is nothing to panic about. The COVID's gonna pass. This is a situation. The uncertainty has always been there. When you see that, it's just so empowering.
Yeah, I think if COVID has done nothing, it has definitely called into question this illusion we had with certainty. Okay. So yes, there's always hope. There's always solutions, whether or not we know them at the moment. But if we have the right mindset and are open to them, the solutions come. And that's, I think, our job. Our job as leaders is to bring that sense of certainty to these uncertain futures. I think our job as leaders is to facilitate answers or the solutions, even when we don't know them. So it's been a great life. And those have just been great lessons that continue to serve me to this day.
Yes. Thank you, Sherrin, for this insightful conversation. I'd like to extend my gratitude to have met you and deliver this amazing discussion to Open School of Business today.
Thank you for having me. What a pleasure it's been to be here.